Okay, good evening. I think it's the evening now. So now we're going to do a quick 20-minute ad hoc session here with Mr. Adrian Sherwood and Mr. Stewart Lee. Round of applause, please. Yeah. So, because it's so fast, we can't get into the depth of things, but I want to know precisely what you're doing here, Adrian. You're going to DJ later on, aren't you?
Yeah, and I was invited a couple of reasons. We've got the wonderful record shop in town, one of the best in the country, and I haven't really put, in the last 5 years, I haven't put many records out. I did the Sherwood and Pinch, so I just released Pay It All Back Volume 7, which after a 20-odd year gap, and I've got the best Lee Perry album in about 35 years coming out this next week, called Rainford, which is his real name, and I've come here to do a little, we're going to promote that a bit, and I'm doing a 2-hour little DJ dub set tonight, playing all unreleased, rare, and some classic tunes.
So when you talk about a new Lee Scratch Perry record being the best one 30 years, I mean, what's the difference in it? I mean, tell us a bit more about the record.
Well, I've said this a couple of times lately, but what happened is I think Lee doesn't give a lot of himself. The beauty of him is he's mischievous, like a naughty kid, and then he's also very spiritual and very serious, and obviously that spans all his work. The first stuff I heard was when he was doing all the Rude records, early days, and then he did the instrumentals. Remember the Cadbury's Fruit and Nutcase and all that stuff as well as a kid. And by the time you piece together how brilliant he is, I was then getting into all the pre-Black Ark stuff was brilliant, and then the Black Ark stuff's obviously a batch of work to itself. But I felt throughout all his work he weren't really giving that much intimacy of him, and he's like 83 now. Mm. So what I thought to do was that Rick Rubin did an album with Johnny Cash right at the end of his life. Well, not the end of his life, the latter stage of his career, sorry. But it was a great album, and I thought if I could get Lee to do like his autobiography on a tune, and then get him to do some, let go a little bit. I started off, he said, come and stay with him in Jamaica, so I went to stay with him and his wife, and he started off and he said, I'm not going to do what you tell me. That was the first thing.
That's what you hope he'd say, isn't it?
He said to me, yeah. I said, okay then, Lee. But we then embarked on making a track which is about 7 minutes long, and it's like his life story about how his father was a Freemason, his mother was an Eto queen into like science or voodoo, and how his life went. It's a great... Anyway, the album's also very song-oriented, much more than other things, and it's a really, really great piece of work. So I'm here as part of the recent period. I'm promoting that. It's the first release for a long time. And I've got a new album with Horace Andy coming later in the year. And next year is the 40th anniversary of my label. So wow. Yeah. What I'm doing is just enjoying myself, really. I'm coming to see my dear friend Mark Stewart. Mm-hmm. And his little mate Gareth. Where is he? Sorry.
I think they're just getting ready to play here in 25 minutes.
Yeah. With Lee Perry, right? He's one of these people you meet people who've interviewed and they go, oh, he's mad, he did this and he did that. People that I've interviewed that people have said are difficult, like Rocky Erickson from the 13th Elevators or
most
Mark
fun,
Smith.
Probably all of them.
Well, I got the idea that it was easier for them to behave like that as a way of not having their time wasted or getting asked stupid questions. And actually, they were much less difficult if you asked them something that they were interested in. Is that what he's like? I mean, presumably you got a working relationship with him.
Well, with him, he actually, quite honestly, I think he thinks if you go in a studio, he wants to think you're going to make magic in there. Some people go to work, and some people do that with music. Oh, we're going to work today. We're going to make a tune. He will go in there, stick things on the wall, light candles, and everyone's got to believe they're doing some magic. I think Brian Eno's quite like that. He make everyone calm, make a good vibe. Not that I work with him, but I heard that's the kind of thing he does. But he does it on a different level. And I think every minute of his life, he thinks something is supposed to be because spontaneous, fun. So he's great. He won't sit still. Yeah. And he hardly ever sits down. So you'll be in a studio with him, and he's like, not a kid. He's still up nearly all the time, so his back's strong.
Yeah.
And no, he's a bit of a mad bastard, but he's great. He's great. He's always thinking he's going to do something special.
Yeah.
I mean, do you work like that as well? Do you create an environment in the studio? It's pretty much just you and your own, isn't it, a lot of the time?
Yeah, well, I'm not. an artist like that, he's a great artist, and I'm like facilitating it and I'm steering things, got my own little way of doing stuff. But you do want to make sure everyone feels great, Have a pub break with us. We have a little pub break and do little things for an hour and make sure everyone feels good. Consider everybody. But I definitely have modelled my things on that. That his ethos of trying to make you believe you're going to do something really special.
I mean, like you were saying a minute ago, you're 40 years in now, which seems crazy, doesn't it?
Started very young.
I mean, as the years have rolled on to the point you're at now, how much is what you do change? You change. Do you get different sort of favourite sounds, or do you sort of hone down on sounds that you really like as you got older?
Well, I'm always open to hearing a new sound, but I've definitely got my favourite things, vintage stuff, and there's great companies like Eventide still making amazing things that you can buy cheaply, and it's down to anything. It's how you use whatever you've got. And some of the best records ever made have been made on 2-track or 4-track. It's really down to performance and ideas and making something that jumps out the speakers at you. Not really the equipment. I've definitely got my favourite things. I could bore you talking about them, but unless you're actually
quite interesting.
What's that? Yeah.
I mean, didn't you invent some reverse dub sort of delay effect or something? Was that one of yours?
No, what we used to do was we had some rhythms that were slightly out of sync because I'd overdubbed the great Style Scott over a previously recorded drum beat, and it was slightly out. So to make it sound interesting, we turned the multi-track over and then roughly gauged where it was, the foot drum and how it should be. And then by adding a reverb and the delays, it was all kind of sucking in on itself. And you then turn the mixtape over and it's playing forward, but the effects are coming backwards. And we did that. That was an album called Starship Africa. I did that actually. That was pre-On You. I did that when I was about, must have been about 20 or something, or 19 or so. But we did that because we was experimenting. And the engineer introduced me to it. I can't tell you the credits. Why don't you try that? Oh, that's brilliant. So that album, people still really love that album. David Rodigan hated it.
Really?
Yeah. Which I'm really pleased about. He said, "What do you think you're doing to reggae music?" I hate that.
But surely that is. I mean, we haven't got time to get into it, but the art of dub. A dub was you could do anything with the studio. Use a studio as an instrument to reshape the sound in any way you wanted. Well,
Dennis Bovell says he thought Jimi Hendrix was one of the first dub people. The use of minimalisation, stripping something down, and then using effects and stuff. That's what I've done all my life, and I love it. And I've been involved with some of the earliest ever dub records. Did all the Cry Tough dubs, Prince Farai, and those other things. And then obviously working with people like who's coming up next, the great Mark Stewart. He a lot of like-minded people were listening to this stuff coming from the Jamaican studios, and also listening to people from not that environment and adding those things ourselves. For me, I did it to try not to. I didn't want to sound like just a copy of a Jamaican studio. So we took on board. You mentioned The Fall earlier. Mentioning Mark Smith. I did some records with him, and I learnt from him about anti-production. No reverb, no delay. So you suddenly got like this wet, big wall of sound, and you dry it up, and then move it around. EQ sweeps.
In effect, it's almost an effect as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
by
but
having no effects.
It's a serious thing if you have something really, really with no effects, and you just got the natural sound and tonality of it, and then you suddenly sweep it into a big EQ and pull it to pieces. You get something exciting and interesting done. And so kind of all those different schools of sound, from the Cramps or Link Ray or The Fall or anybody, Mark and the Gareth and then with the pop group, everybody was really into sound, and a lot of people, they weren't so much into sound. They just we're playing our jingle rock and roll thing, and it was secondary to them. But other people, like myself, were obsessed with the sound as much as maybe more than the music. Yeah,
but the idea of the desk as an instrument.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So speaking of Mavericks, you're here, Stewart. Not you personally. Maybe you are actually, but making a film about Rob Lloyd and Nightingales.
Yeah.
So if you expand on that a little bit, and also actually it's a crowd-funded film. Is that the right term for it? So he actually needs you to contribute to the film to get the sodding thing finished, don't you? Yeah.
Well, we're here because they said we could show our film that we're trying to make about 80s post-punk Birmingham survivors, the Nightingales who played this afternoon, and then loads of other events have got loaded on it. Tomorrow I'm interviewing the folk musicians who did the music for the Bagpuss TV series in the 70s, and they're going to be playing live, and I'm doing a little stand-up set in the morning somewhere, but I think that's all filled up now. Yeah, it's great. This reminds me of going to festivals a long time ago when they'd be more like this, like the Elephant Fair or something, where lots of discursive little break-off things were happening, and everyone would get a different experience depending on which part of the site they were on at whatever time. It's really great.
So to tell us a bit more about the film itself, what story are you trying to tell?
Well, I suppose, Rob Lloyd from the Nightingales said, do you think there should be a film about us? And I thought about it, and I thought, what film would that be? And I talked to Michael, the director, who's also, I'd known him for ages, but he turned out to be a Nightingales fan, so that worked out well. And I suppose it's about a number of things. One is, how do you keep a cult concern going for 4 decades when you might get really good reviews in certain kinds of publications, but you're not necessarily a household name and there's no money to be made out of it. And also, partly about how things have changed in that even when I started doing stand-up at the end of the 80s, there was a lot more leeway for people to just sort of get by. You know, you could live more cheaply, you could get little temp jobs. If you did a gig, you got paid in cash, or, you know, and that created a space where people could spend 10 years working out what they were doing. And I think the debt culture and the cost of housing and everything has crunched that down. Certainly in comedy, it seems like young people, if they want to do it, they have to hit the ground running with much more of an idea of what they're trying to do, and perhaps make compromises that we had the luxury of not making because we weren't as pressurised as them, you know. So it's partly about how that's changed, and it's about, I suppose, it's about the sort of person that environment created and how they could carry on through their life doing things. What it won't be, hopefully, is I watched loads of documentaries with my 11-year-old when we were thinking about making it to try and work out what I didn't want to do. And I said to my son, what are all those films like about bands and documentaries? And he said, they're just loads of old men talking in rooms, and then there's black and white photos of things. I thought, yeah, it's got to not be that. So, for example, this afternoon, we did an interview on the roof here with some trees in the background, which is already not the kind of thing you see in a lot of...
It's colour, at least.
It's got some green stuff in it, rather than just the inside of studios and pubs. So, yeah, and also we've been able to... It's also become, you know, in a slightly funny way, a film about making a film, because we're funding it ourselves bit by bit as we go along, so we didn't have to deliver a proposal to anyone, and certain things have come up in conversation that we're able to follow that we perhaps wouldn't have been able to if we'd had to fulfil the brief, that we'd made little stories that Rob remembers about things like having a shower with 70s sex comedy star Robin Asquith. We're now in touch with Robin Asquith and we're going to Malta to meet him. And that he once got a job replacing Nigel Slater as food critic of GQ somehow. And Nigel Slater's agreed to talk to us about that, although he says he can't remember it happening, which is, so there's lots of great little dead ends. And also, because it's me working with Michael, who I know, and Rob, who I trust, we can have a bit of fun with the interviews, and I can say things like, at this point, we'll probably cut to an interview with someone else saying that they don't remember this thing you've talked about happening, and then we can sort of do that. So hopefully it'll be more fun than those things normally are, and it will have a kind of critical relationship with itself on some level.
I mean, it's the idea of it being a very maverick band working on their own terms. Yeah. Is that part of the fascination? Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I mean, they are a maverick band working on their own terms, and it's interesting to see how that works. And it's interesting to see what the Fliss, who joined 10 years ago, the drummer, has brought to it in terms of an organisational sense. People like to look at a group like that and think, oh, it's all just come together in chaos. But there's obviously a lot of... Well, what I'd sort of forgotten about was just this... I went on the road with them last year and supported them at a lot of gigs. I did stand-up, which I didn't think was going to work, but it was good, actually. But just the effort of moving all that gear around when you're not going to probably break even on the balance of a tour. And how, you know, a flat tyre can throw the whole thing out of sync. And there's a sort of... there's a sort of heroism about it that I don't think we notice so much in Britain. You attach it more to American bands, don't you? The idea that they're on the road, going down the highway. It all seems very romantic. Whereas going on the A40 somewhere hasn't got the same sort of lustre to it. But that is a thing that is happening. That heroic romantic story is happening everywhere still all the time.
And is that like a maverick spirit that you can identify with? Well, you personally, all the people you work with, this kind of willful. There's a vision, and you don't deviate from it. Whatever the vision is the most important thing.
Well, I think with some of the greatest artists have, like you're saying, that they're not necessarily the most successful artists, but they're still, doesn't mean they're not brilliant or whatever. Just somehow something captures the imagination of the public and clicks in, and they're like multi-zillionaires, and they're like a bit crap, a lot of them, to be honest. And then somebody else works for donkey's years on they're practicing every day, and they've got the people who love them. It's like, my God, it touches their spirit, soul.
Yeah.
But then they're playing a pub to 30 people in the middle of nowhere, having driven for hundreds of miles.
So I imagine
like me now.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Sorry, no, but
no. It's 32. We're doing all right.
But that's how it goes. You do music or entertainment or art or whatever. At least you've got a better life than a lot of other people, haven't you? But and you do like they're loved. You love that band. I know you love Shirley Collins, and you're music man. There's like, you don't mean. I work with some of the people I know. It's just sad, really, because you see lots of them and they're genius, and they're like suffering because there's not so many gigs like there used to be. I remember when the DJs come on, the disco killed the musicians, and it's never kind of recovered in a way. It's still easier to put Madonna miming on stage or some rubbish like that than a proper performing band. Anyway,
do you
I don't know
find
if that answers the question?
Well, yeah, in a sense, yeah. I mean, do you find you work in isolation quite a lot, don't you? You probably don't really have any idea where the stuff's actually going to go. You're just making it. You're just getting engaged by the sounds that you're making and fascinated by them.
Well, me, I've been lucky because I make records to please myself or with people that I really like. And I've only ever done jobs to make money to prop up what I wanted to do. So I'm a bit fortunate. But I see other people who, literally, they can't make an album every year. They might make one every few years. Great example, Mark Stewart. Mark's a brilliant songwriter, but he can't just knock an album out every year. So it don't follow that you're going to make a living easily by not being hit oriented. I don't know if that's how the industry's geared. You're supposed to be whatever. For me, I flex about doing a few different things, but
What are the few different things you do now?
Well, I run what's loosely called a business with a record label, but that's not. That's a different matter. I do production, remixing, and I go and do live shows. I do, like tonight, I'm doing a DJ little dub set from 11 till 1 in the morning, if anyone's got any energy left. And I can mix bands live, and I do quite, so all of which I like doing.
Yeah, I guess it's different slightly different versions of the same thing, isn't it? Yeah, that love of that music, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I count myself very lucky, and I'm blessed. So I don't even, I just, like you're saying with your mates, they're running up and down the country. They're a brilliant band, and the people who love them. They're people who just possibly would just play their music and one or two other things they love. And then somebody else who's like, to be honest with you, on a talent scale from here to here, they're down here, but this one down here captured the imagination of people, and they suddenly zoom, like, done really well, and it's like, my God, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. Yeah. So with the film now, where are you up to? Is it about halfway through filming it?
I think so, probably about 2/3, unless some other mad stories come up. But we try and finish it for documentary festivals in the autumn, and we just basically try and do little events to fund the next hiring of a camera crew for 2 days. So get a bit from tomorrow morning for the stand-up, put that into it. Then we're doing a screening in London of a documentary Michael made about when he worked on Chris Morris's Brass Eye, and used the money from that to get the camera crew for the next little 2-day session. So, yeah, and Records been really good at helping out on it. So, it's been really good not having to. It's been really good not having to be answerable to anyone, basically.
If people want to contribute to it, you go to King Rocker.
Yeah, it's King Rocker. Yeah, and there's a
.com.
and I think you get your name mentioned in the credits at the end or something. Or,
not in the film.
Yeah, not in the film. Maybe in the film if it's not.
If you pay a little extra, you can get Rob Lloyd to cuss you.
Everyone's names. But yeah, no, that's all rolling ahead, and I mean it's the end. The end seems in sight now, and it's been really good.
I mean, what is your fascination with something like Rob? You like all those kind of bands. It's the kind of quirky, angular underground.
I suppose one of the things that gets you first as a kid is the lyrics, which they're this interesting mix of sort of mundane things and surreal things. They sound like they use phrases from everyday life, but in quite a quirky way. Often it'll take you 4 decades to work out what they're about, and then you go, oh yeah, great. And then I like the fact that it was set against this, endlessly inventive music. It's like a traditional rock sort of setup, but it'd be going in all different places. If you saw them this afternoon, they'd run all the songs together, so you never knew quite where you were. It was really exciting. But yeah, I do like people with a singular sort of vision. And also a weird thing that's happened in our lifetime is a lot of people don't find it necessary to stop. There seemed to be a sort of feeling that you had to make it by a particular point, but I think the internet's allowed people to keep in contact with their audiences and grow new ones, and so you end up liking bands for 40 years now. They keep on.
A band is for life, not just for Christmas.
Bands for life is for Christmas. Yeah, it's quite exhausting. A lot of the people who are at the best seem to be really prolific and have not died, which is expensive to be a fan of them. But yeah, it just goes on.
I mean, but that's the interesting thing about Band of the Nightingales. They're actually at the peak now, aren't they? Which is
they're
against the old rules of music, isn't
they're
it?
the best they've been. Yeah. It's 43 years in, I suppose. Yeah.
They're sort of working out how to do it now.
Yeah.
And I always think this thing as well about the kind of comedy you do, the way you do it, is all very parallel to those kind of bands as well, especially Nightingales in a sense.
I was sort of made by the John Peel show, and so that informed your sensibility in the 80s. It formed the music, informed the politics of it. It informs the quirky sense of humour. Even a lot of, it's hard for people to imagine now, but if you were interested in what was called alternative comedy in the early 80s and you didn't live in London, you weren't really going to see it anywhere. I used to see comics supporting bands. I saw Ted Chippington opening for The Fall, Peter Richardson from the comic strip opening for Dexys, and Phil Jupitus, when he used to be called Porky the Poet, opening for the Sid Presley Experience, I think, in the early 80s. And then but Peel used to play sort of sessions of people. He had a set. He put Eric Bogosian on, American sort of performance art stand-up, did a Peel session. Ted Chippington did a Peel session, and this stuff, it wasn't on telly, and you weren't going to see it live if you were a 14-year-old schoolboy not in London. So that sensibility sort of formed it, and a lot of those acts had relationships with musicians as well, and they would tour opening with them. Although, funnily enough, it didn't always work out. I mean, I saw Peter Richardson doing this Mexican bandit character opening for Dexys, and I thought it was brilliant. And
I love Peter Richardson.
Yeah, from the comic strip. Yeah, and it was really great. And it ended up being
Fun Seekers. He incorporated that in Fun Seekers.
Yeah, it ended up being in Fistful of Travellers Checks, that character.
Yeah, remember the one where they all go off for the Club 1830?
Yeah.
Down the Spanish. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I met him once and said I saw that and it was brilliant. And it really set me on the way to being a stand-up. And he went, "Oh, really?" So it went down so badly, I never did it again ever after that night. And I must have been on my own, as I often was.
I'm a big fan of the Yob and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
Great stuff.
Genius,
yeah, but it wasn't. It kind of they were on telly by that
he
point.
He did
Weren't
Eat the
they?
Rich as well. Then was that Peter who wrote that, didn't he?
Yeah, he died recently actually. Yeah, the other
Peter
one,
did.
Peter Richards, who wrote for it. Yeah, Peter Richards was two of them. But yeah, it's yeah. So you'd sort of. It was really like the. Late night Radio 1, I suppose, when it used to be, when it was a bush telegraph, when there wasn't really other ways of finding out about stuff.
I mean, talking to Ted, he was meant to be here now, wasn't he? But he's not turned up, has he? Which is very Ted, actually.
That's
isn't
the
it?
best way to maintain the legend, isn't it? to not be there. Yeah,
I couldn't imagine him coming and sitting. It's not his thing, is it, to do this?
No, it's the same time I've booked him for something he hasn't turned up. I'm starting to wonder if I imagined him.
It's not like he had to come very far. Yeah.
No, I mean he lives literally on the next train stop from me.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I mean, he fits so perfect in this idea that what you're doing is a parallel, in a sense, to Nightingales.
well,
but he's
I think-
right in the middle of that, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ted Chipping, I saw Ted Chippington as a stand-up opening for the Four when I was about 15. I'd never seen anything like it. He's, you know, he could tell you himself if he was here, but he came out and he wore a sort of teddy boy outfit. He didn't really have any material. He told the same joke about 5 times, which was, I was walking down this road the other day, bloke came up to me and he said something and I said something else. That just over and over again, like, how far is it to the railway station? 5 miles. 5 miles? Yeah, roughly speaking. Rubbish jokes that made the audience really angry or in hysterics. And the thing I got off it was what you get off a lot of maverick artists. It wasn't that I wanted to do that, but I thought, you can do anything. You know, stand-up doesn't have to be Ben Elton, it doesn't have to be Bernard Manning. It could be a man saying the same thing over and over again with minimal variation. It could be someone who's performing, looking as if they don't even want to be there, and that's made it funny. So it wasn't that you exactly copied it, and I think that was the thing you get off people like that. It's not necessarily that you want to do that thing, but that it means you can do your own thing. That's certainly what I get off a lot of seeing, you know. That's why I get a lot of inspiration for stand-up off music, because it's seeing people go down particular blind alleys, or you know, and see where it takes them.
Yeah, we're not even bothering about getting the laugh at the end.
Yeah.
In fact, for Ted, it was actually trying not to get the laugh.
Yeah,
Wasn't
but that made it funnier.
Even funnier, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So when's the Lee Scratch Perry album out?
It's out next week.
Next week.
Yeah, we've got some advanced copies of it shipped up here. So
Oh, you got some here?
Yeah.
Is that, will they be on sale here? Or?
they're at the record shop. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What, in Drift in town? Right.
And when the Horace Andy, when's that due?
Horace Andy, I'm playing loads of dub plates tonight, all unreleased, Rare Tunes, Lee Perry, Horace, everything, and that's finished now. I'm hoping I'd like to see it released this year, but I've got to try and sort it all out to get it to people, even though it exists. Because now our problem is promoting anything.
Yeah.
John Peel, you mentioned, a great man. If it weren't for him, I would never have got started. He played my first ever production on the show, and off you go.
Yeah.
You know, great.
He not only did have a great ear, but he's also the place that everyone had to go to for whatever style of music they liked. So you would get turned on to all this other stuff by listening to his show as well.
Yeah, he was very much his own man. He's a very wide taste in stuff. Gave everybody sessions, and you know, I've got him a great deal to thank John Peel for, as have countless other people from, you know. And nowadays the problem you've got is there's so much, you're bombarded with stuff all the time from everywhere, and to get noticed, it's probably just, you know, but maybe even it's harder now than it was in those days, where it was very competitive, you know, to get gigs or plays.
Yeah. So I guess the theme of this little mini chat is a celebration of the Maverick, isn't it? Yeah. We've been celebrating you, celebrating the Nightingales, celebrating John Peel. And in about 5 minutes, we'll celebrate the spirit of the pop group. So thanks to my guests,
Thank you.
Adrian and Stewart.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Stewart.